Well, greetings, everyone. Lee Schalk and Jonathan Williams from the ALEC policy team here, coming to you from the ALEC studio. And we're excited to talk a little bit about our latest publication from the ALEC policy team, which is our 2024 Essential Policy Solutions. Now, if you were with us in Scottsdale, Arizona, just the other day for our States and Nation Policy Summit, you may have heard a little bit about this new publication. You may have even grabbed a couple of hard copies to take back home with you. But for those of you who weren't able to join us, we wanted to give an overview today about what this is all about and why we publish this report and how you might be able to use it back home in your state.
And yeah, it's a great point, Lee. And this is the first edition that we've put together in advance of a legislative session, where we're really excited. We talked to many state legislators just recently in Scottsdale, Arizona, at the winter meeting, as they were sending it back to even colleagues back home that couldn't be with us as we launched it at the winter meeting as a resource for them to, some great best practices, dozens of ideas across all of our 10 policy task forces at ALEC, putting together some of the best and brightest ideas for free market reforms. And so many good things to unpack here. I know we want to do that in this discussion, but from an ALEC-wide perspective, the 3 E's have been a key of the ALEC policy priorities: economic opportunity, education freedom, energy independence. Those you'll see highlighted, very much in detail, but dozens of ideas across the policy space here for every state legislator, red state or blue state alike.
That's exactly right. And a couple of the features of this year's report, I should mention, a lot of you may have gotten a copy of our 2023 Essential Policy Solutions. That was really helpful this year, I think. But this year, we wanted to make sure to put this in everyone's hands going into the 2024 legislative sessions. Lots of great ideas, as you mentioned, dozens of ideas, whether it's model policies or ALEC publications or other reports that we've released. And one of the fun things about this year's report, as you flip through the publication, or if you're scrolling through the digital version that's at alec.org, you'll find a QR code in every single section. You can scan that code and it'll take you to a landing page on the ALEC website where you can find the model policies, the publications, or other articles that we've authored.
Well, that's such a great point, too, because this is so much beyond just a piece of model policy. There's the resources that we have from our policy team and their research and analysis that they put together in publications across the country, but as well as our original research that so many of our different task forces now have great pieces of research, whether the new report on energy affordability, report on education freedom, of course, rich states, poor states, pension reform. If you're caring about a topic within the ALEC portfolio, starting with this publication, of course, there's so much beyond that with the publications and research and analysis our team can provide.
And our policy directors have done a great job giving us their best and brightest ideas that they think are most relevant to the states for all Americans, but also we've taken feedback from ALEC members, state legislators, folks in the private sector, and this is what we came up with. And so we're really excited to talk more about this year. I'll also note, if you ever want to get in touch with our team, of course, you can contact Jonathan or myself, but in the back of the publication, you'll find contact information for everyone on our team. The other thing I always like to mention to folks, we even slid in a membership application there. So if you've got friends or colleagues, state legislators that aren't members of ALEC but need to be, if you've got the hard copy, or if you want to print off a copy from the website, you've got a membership application, because we're really only as strong as the ALEC membership. And we've just got a great list of ALEC members across the country who bring these ideas to us. So, Jonathan, one of the things I think that we wanted to touch on today was, what are some of the policy ideas that we saw that were really successful in 2023, some of the trends that we saw that I think may carry into 2024?
Yeah, no, it's there's a couple of big ones here, and I just mentioned the 3 overarching ALEC policy priorities of energy and economic opportunity, education, freedom. And I think we've seen some of the best strides in recent memory in the course of, when you look at tax cuts and states, taking these historic surpluses. I mean, a lot of folks forget we're at 50-year high budget surpluses for many states. Now, there's a few like California that just announced a massive budget deficit because they spent even faster than the revenue came in. But we've seen a scenario scenario now where, I mean, if you can't cut taxes in an environment like this over the last several legislative sessions, you might as well just give up your tax cutting card, right? Because this was the time to cut taxes and give that surplus money back to the folks that earned it, the hardworking taxpayers. And so we go into great lengths in this publication to talk about the best practices for how do you cut taxes most effectively. How do you get the biggest bang for the buck if you're going to cut taxes? Whether that's income taxes, as we talk about, as being the most damaging type of taxes. We've seen 5 states become flat taxes on personal income tax in 2022. We saw a continuation of that trend of states focusing on personal income tax reductions. Then, of course, you have this huge phenomenon. I just on the phone earlier today talking again about massive inflation when it comes to property tax assessments. And so one of our most popular pieces of model policy, as you know well, is our truth in taxation model based on Utah, adopted by Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska in recent years, to really get to the heart of the issue of overspending by local units of government that causes these property tax burdens to go up. And so if folks are looking at ways to prioritize hardworking taxpayers back home in 2024, we've got a whole lot of great ideas when it comes to our research from rich states, poor states, and what matters for being really a state that is effective at cutting taxes.
Yeah, I think that it's really been amazing over the last couple of years, really a historic moment for tax reform, states lowering their income taxes. And as we talk about all the time here at ALEC, states can really fall behind by standing still on tax policy, on fiscal policy. But that's not the only place where states can fall behind by standing still. And one of the really exciting trends that we've seen, and we'll hear more about this from Andrew Handel on our team, but that is the education freedom movement, this movement to empower parents with more choices in their children's education. And so we're really excited again to highlight that in this year's edition. We even linked to one of our newest reports, which is our 50-state guide to education freedom. Really, we call it our 50-state guide to parental empowerment. And I believe this will be a really critical tool for legislators and parents going into the new year.
Well, we continue to hear from legislators every single day that they want to enhance parental involvement in their children's education, right, and give them more options. And this started with ALEC board member Patricia Rucker from West Virginia just a couple of years ago, passing universal Hope Scholarship accounts there for West Virginia. And then, of course, Arizona took that mantle up and spread it. And then we saw a whole slew of states this last year, moving that total up to about a dozen states that have universal type programs to empower parents and students and have the funding follow whatever the best course of education they think is best for their kids, whether it's homeschooling, public, private, charter. That is the beauty of it, is competition breeds success. And I think this is the magic moment that we're seeing for school choice, and it will continue through 2024 and beyond. I'm convinced of it. It will be a big focus of our efforts at ALEC, I know, going forward.
Yeah, it really is amazing. Again, talking about the momentum, we're up to 10 states now that have universal education freedom policies in place, as you mentioned, starting with West Virginia, then Arizona, and then in 2023, 8 more states joined the list, and it's really been amazing. I think the other thing that we've been talking about a lot is that these aren't ideas that are just for red states or blue states. These are policy ideas that are for all Americans. And I don't know, Jonathan, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because that's so important as an organization, as a policy team that has been to all 50 states doing policy events over the last about year and a half. We hear from members in all types of states, all types of political environments, that these ideas are resonating, or that they should be resonating, and maybe they just need tips on how to better communicate them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and at the heart of it, ALEC is a nonpartisan organization that we serve legislators of all stripes, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Vegetarian, as I like to say, any kind of state legislator we want to be there for with these resources. And so as we've traveled to 50 states, I was probably in 35 states in the last year. You were in a ton of states, and we heard time and time again, whether the majority party, minority party, it doesn't matter what the background is. We have solutions that will make people's lives better off in their districts back home. And I will say our 50 years of trusted policy solutions at ALEC, these model policies come from state legislators and then are approved by our legislators on our ALEC board of directors. So legislatively driven, we find out what's mattering to communities. And of course, that all bubbles up into what we have 900 some pieces of model policy on our website. that we focus on the dozens of here in the priorities, but I mean, so many great resources across the board, and it's something that is there's something there for everybody. One final story about that of just I think the most effective piece of ALEC model policy probably in the history of ALEC over now 50 years of trusted policy solutions actually was a bipartisan piece of model policy. I mean, to your point of red state or blue state, this is for every state. But it was Coburn Obama actually back when Barack Obama was in the United States Senate. Tom Coburn, of course, a free market hero from Oklahoma, the late great Senator Coburn, came together with this idea that state budgets, or in their case, the federal budget, ought to be more transparent. And of course, then that came to ALEC, it became a model at the state level, and now all 50 states have adopted, at least in part, the ALEC model policy when it comes to budget transparency. So there's something there for everybody, indeed.
Yeah, I love that example. And one of the ways that I often talk about these policy ideas, these are policy ideas, again, for all Americans. When you boil it down, at the end of the day, we all know that all Americans would benefit and would enjoy being able to keep more of their hard-earned paychecks. There's no downside to that. Parents want more choices for their children's education. They want their children to get the best education. That's another idea for all Americans. We all want safer communities. We all want to protect America from interference from countries like communist China, from the Chinese government. And so all of those policy ideas and more can be found in our 2024 Essential Policy Solutions.
Yeah, and I think, just to underscore that point, I mean, one of the other key pieces that we've talked about in the energy portfolio is protecting retirement dollars and state pensions from this ESG or politically based investing. We've had now about a dozen states adopt our model to shore up state pension funds from this politically based investing. And when you look at some of the vote counts of how it's passed in states across the country, and some of the state legislative chambers, it's come out unanimously in support of the ALEC model policy. So this is, I think, a good example of good policy can be very good politics back home as well.
Well, that's all for today, folks. We're going to leave it there because the ALEC Policy Task Force directors will be sharing more about their specific issue areas and their ideas for the 50 states. So stay tuned, but check out alec.org to download a full copy of this report, and we'll see you out in the States in 2024.